My future sister-in-law sent me a job listing for a personal trainer. She said David deserves someone who takes care of themselves. I smiled and thanked her for thinking of me. We'd been engaged for 6 months. Rachel had always been cold, but this was a new low. The listing came with a note, just trying to help. Wedding photos last forever. I showed David that night while we were making dinner. He sighed and said she's protective. She'll warm up eventually. I asked him when eventually would come. He didn't have an answer. 2 weeks later, Rachel texted asking if I'd started working out yet. I told her I'd been busy with work. She responded within minutes with a gym membership gift card and said, "No excuses now." David saw the message over my shoulder and told me to ignore her, that she means well. I wanted to believe him. The comments kept coming though. At a family barbecue, Rachel mentioned how she and David used to go on 10-mile hikes every weekend. She looked at me and said, "We should all go sometime, if you think you can handle it." I said maybe. She laughed and said, "That's what I thought." When we went wedding dress shopping, Rachel insisted on coming. My mom was there, my best friend Sarah, and Rachel wedged herself into the group. Every dress I tried on, she had something to say. "That one makes you look bigger. Are you sure about sleeveless? Maybe something more forgiving in the waist." My mom finally told her to wait outside. Rachel acted shocked, like she was just being honest. At our engagement dinner with David's whole family, Rachel stood up to make a toast. She talked about growing up with David, about all his ex-girlfriends who were athletic and adventurous. She went on about camping trips and marathons and rock climbing. Then she looked directly at me and said, "But I guess love changes your standards. Sometimes you find someone with other qualities." The table went completely silent. David's dad coughed. His mom stared at her. Wine glass. David squeezed my hand under the table but didn't say a word. I just smiled and took a sip of water. Sarah pulled me aside in the bathroom later. She was furious, ready to confront Rachel right there. I told her to let it go. That confronting her would just make me look sensitive. Sarah said I was being too nice. Maybe I was. That night, David apologized for Rachel's toast. He said she didn't mean it the way it sounded. I asked him how else it could have sounded. He got quiet and said he'd talk to her. I told him not to bother, that I'd handle it my own way. The next morning, I scrolled through my phone looking for a specific photo. I found it buried in my camera roll from 8 months before I met David. Me, crossing the finish line at the Boulder Peak Ultra Marathon, 50 miles through mountain terrain, first place in my age group, 7th overall. I was covered in dirt and sweat, holding up my medal, the biggest smile on my face. I posted it to Instagram with a simple caption, "Throwback to one of my proudest moments. Thanks for the gym membership, Rachel, but I think I'm good." I tagged her. Then I posted 3 more photos. Me summiting a 14,000-foot peak, me at the finish line of a trail marathon, me completing a sprint triathlon, all from before I'd ever met David. My phone started buzzing immediately. Sarah sent me 3 fire emojis. My mom called asking what happened. David's college friends started liking the posts. His cousin commented, "Wait, you're a beast." Then Rachel called David. I could hear her screaming through the phone from across the room. She was saying I embarrassed her, that I made her look stupid, that I was trying to turn the family against her. David kept trying to interrupt, but she wouldn't stop. Finally, he hung up. 10 minutes later, his parents called. They asked if we could come over right now. David's dad sounded serious. We drove over in silence. When we arrived, Rachel was already there, arms crossed, sitting on the couch like she was the victim. David's mom asked me to explain the Instagram posts. I pulled up my race results on my phone. Official times, rankings, photos from multiple events over the past 3 years. Rachel's face went red. She stammered something about how I never mentioned any of this. I said, "You never asked, you just assumed." David's dad turned to Rachel and asked what else she'd been telling people about me. Rachel went quiet. Then David's mom said she'd heard from 3 different relatives that I couldn't keep up with family activities, that I was lazy, that David was settling. David finally confronted her directly and asked why she'd been lying for months about who I was. Rachel went pale and stammered something about protecting him, about making sure he didn't make a mistake. But his mom cut her off and said, "The only person we need protection from is you."